I know that it can be kind of tempting while you're doing flies to do a little bit of a bicep curl, like a double bicep pose, to assist you and kind of close the gap. But that's just going to be doing yourself a disservice. Today's episode is going to be all about the anatomy and biomechanical functions of the chest musculature. I will be talking about the specific anatomy, what's going on in the chest, the functions, all that jazz. And additionally, along the way, I'm going to be showing off two spectacular chest movements that can really emphasize all the functions that you truly want out of your chest. So along the way, I'll be talking about all of these scientific principles that you can not only just apply to these exercises, but you can also apply to your own training to really get the most out of your chest gains as a whole. Let's get into it. Our chest muscles are comprised of the pectoralis major and minor. In the pectoralis major, we have the sternal head, which is just right in line with the sternum, this bone right here. And then we also have the clavicular head, which is this upper chest portion, which is named after the clavicle bones right here. And then additionally, we have the pectoralis minor, which is just some flesh or some muscle rather down beneath, and that's what we call the lower chest. And what it really comes down to is the primary functions of the chest is all to do with humeral adduction, so bringing this long bone right here just across the body, and humeral flexion, so raising this bone up. It's really just, the chest is really just working the humerus under these functions. So whatever you can do where you're going like this with your elbow joint and just your humerus, then you're going to be working the chest a lot. If you just bring your arm across your body, you'll feel your chest flex innately. And then the higher up you're bringing your arm, the more the emphasis is going to shift from the lower pecs up to the clavicular head at its final destination. So anything where you have like an inclined bench press or something along those lines, and you're bringing the humerus across the body in an upwards fashion, is going to be more preferentially targeting the upper portion of the chest. And anything where you're pressing like below down here, there's not much flexion in that regard, so you'd be working more of the lower chest. So do with that what you will. I'm choosing this exercise, which is kind of a 30-degree inclined bench set up at a cable station. You can do any cable station you want as long as you can do it bilaterally. And I'm using a free motion machine in specific. But again, as long as you can get a good, comfortable position where you can really press with stability, then you're going to be doing this just fine. But the reason why I'm choosing this exercise to show off the biomechanics of the chest musculature is because you're getting a huge range of motion, and you really want to get a single muscle in both its length and position under great tension, and also be able to get the full range of motion and get it into its shortened position as well, because that's all the muscles are really doing. They're contracting and they're relaxing. And based off of the origins and insertions of a given muscle, you're going to be moving some joints around. I mean, that's all the muscles are trying to do, is move joints from one position to another. So close the gap on joints. So by doing a cable exercise like this, you don't have a bar limiting your range of motion, so you can just key into whatever your biomechanics and your body wants to do. For me, I love this exercise since I can go all the way down and I can go all the way up and get the full amount of humeral adduction that I possibly can. With something like dumbbells, which are great because you can get a full range of motion, you still have those rubber sides that are going to hit each other, so they're kind of stopping you a little bit. Versus with this, there's no rubber side, so you can get even further across, and if you really wanted to, you could kind of like angle it and go even further. I don't really think it's necessary, especially since I'm doing decently heavy weight for myself. It's relatively heavy. The only downside with this lift is, since it is cables, you're a little wibble wobbly, but I don't believe that that is a real detriment. I don't think that it really takes away from the lift too substantially, but it's one of those movements where you probably can't load up as much weight as you may be desired to on something like an inclined barbell bench press may allow you to do. However, if your goal is hypertrophy, like mine is in this current moment, the weight shouldn't actually hold any real value. It's all about the tension, and by using cables, you're getting constant tension that you are subjecting your chest to. So since we know that the chest is really only responsible for humeral flexion and adduction, then the cue of like pushing something off of you isn't really doing the chest the full amount of justice that I think that it deserves. Just pushing something off of you, just kind of an arbitrary way of describing using your chest. Instead, I think that we should use the cue of just bringing the upper arm, so the humerus, closer to the midline of the body. And if you're just, while you're pressing, if you imagine that, just kind of bringing your elbows together, kind of like that, then I feel like it's going to help your mind-muscle connection a lot. And I think that it will help you get more out of your chest ultimately. Versus if you're just thinking of pushing something off of you, sure, you're going to be working the chest, of course, but you're not going to be working to its biomechanical functions as well. Just try pushing like this versus bring your elbows together like that. You should be able to feel the difference. You should be able to feel a much greater shortened or contracted position when you are doing that. So I think that this cue can be helpful anytime you're pressing, not just for this specific exercise, though I think it's easier to feel with this exercise since it's really letting you kind of do what you want since it's a cable machine. But I think that this logic can be applied to pretty much any pressing variation if you just key into that thought while you are doing the variation. Next up, I'm moving on to a fly variation, and I'm doing it at the same exact machine with the same exact bench. And the reason why I like to include a fly variation as well is because a fly variation is inherently an isolation lift. You're only working the shoulder joint in this case. You're just doing humeral adduction, so there's no elbow joint in being involved. In other words, there's no extension, there's no flexion. At least there shouldn't be while you are doing the lift. I know that it can be kind of tempting while you're doing flies to do a little bit of a bicep curl, like a double bicep pose, to assist you and kind of close the gap. But that's just going to be doing yourself a disservice. The way that I like to get the most out of my fly variations is I don't have to keep my arm perfectly straight. I don't have to keep it perfectly bent or anywhere in between. But whatever angle of elbow extension that I'm sticking to, that I start with rather, I should stick to for the duration of the lift in order to not allow my biceps or triceps to assist in the motion. And this is just a way to kind of add in a little bit of extra volume without totally destroying yourself at the end of the day. And I think that this variation is especially useful because with a machine, like a pec deck machine or something, you're going to be stopped right here. With dumbbells of any sort, you're going to be stopped right here. With most fly variations, you're going to be stopped right here. But when you're using a cable variation like this, you can go across the body. You can actually kind of take the humerus even further than that midpoint, and going even further just results in a greater contraction overall. So I like to kind of rotate to prevent imbalance. It just feels right to me, and I think that's the beauty of this exercise. And additionally, you're also super stable, so that's a plus as well. Some people tend to think that your hand positioning can play a role in how your chest functions. So they'll say, oh, pronate your wrists while you're doing a chest fly or a chest press, supinate your wrists, you get better activation, neutral, whatever. But what makes you think from all the information that I've shared about chest biomechanics that the chest would have any role whatsoever to how your wrist is positioned in space? It really doesn't. The only thing that the wrist is going to be activating is it may mess with the arm musculature because the biceps is a supinator, for instance. So by supinating your wrist, you're actually going to get some more bicep activation, but that doesn't actually play any role in how your chest is functioning whatsoever. They're working on completely different joints. Working the glenohumeral joint of the shoulder, which is where the chest is ultimately working, has nothing to do with the radial ulnar joint in the elbow, which is going to be responsible for that wrist movement, the supination and the pronation and stuff like that. So I think that you should just be pressing with whatever is comfortable for you and whatever feels right. Some people will do like the suicide grip, which is just palms supinated, and then they'll press. Now that may like kind of help them in some regard, but it may help like them feel better or something. But for me, I think that is just giving your hands and just your biomechanics a worse room to work. So they're actually not being able to do their full most extent. Because I'd be afraid of like dropping the bar, kind of losing my grip because you don't have your palm to be supporting it as well in that case. But to each their own. You can certainly give it a shot and see what you like, but I just like to stick to the basics. I'm going to be doing a neutral grip on most of my fly variations, and I'm going to be doing a pronated grip when it comes to most of my pressing. I'm certain that some of you also noticed that I adjusted the seat going from the press and cable exercise to the fly cable exercise. And my main reasoning for that is not a super strong one because I didn't adjust it much. But the further flat you are because of the line of pull or push, humeral adduction that I was talking about earlier, rather, the way that the humerus, while going across the body, is aligning with the fibers, it's actually going to be preferentially targeting different heads. So by having it more upright, I'm shifting the emphasis more to the clavicular head instead of the sternal head or the lower pecs. But by bringing it down slightly, I'm going to be bringing the emphasis of where the fibers are being hit lower and lower and lower. Now, I know that in today's session, we didn't hit much of the lower pecs, but I think that most guys want the upper portion of the chest more developed since it gives more of a masculinized look, in my opinion. But if you just want overall development, then please hit that as well. Even though on every chest movement, and I want to really emphasize this, on every single chest movement, you're going to be hitting the whole gambit of the chest, the pec major and the pec minor. So the whole ordeal. It's just that when we start getting into like the nitpicky, like we really want to emphasize certain parts, that's where some angles may come into play. So if you're having like a lagging lower chest, which is can be kind of hard to notice unless you're really low body fat percentage, then consider throwing in something like a chest dip. I've talked about this before on other videos. More upright is going to be working more tricep, more lean forward, since you're kind of like angling the fibers more, is going to be working more of the low chest. Or you could do like a dip machine or a decline bench press or whatever. But I think that just by doing these two movements, maybe you throw in like a machine press or something, you're going to be hitting the chest very, very, very well. And please, if you guys find that you don't like this exercise, you don't like the setup, or you don't have it available for either of these exercises, then just follow the sound basic science that I laid out for you guys and construct your own workout program. You don't need to stick to anybody else's once you know what you're doing. So thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.